Pranakasha live stream.
Hey folks, it's Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we are talking with Kalond Irlanda, an actor and astrologer from LA. Hey Kalond, and I should also say, besides being Matt from Pranakasha Productions, I'm also the Star Trek cello guy, the lead singer of the Macadamians Party Band, and Internet Shirt Yogi.
Internet shirt yogi.
Yeah.
I love it. I didn't know you could say.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
All these things. All right. So how do we know each other?
So how do we know each other?
Me and Kalond did a reading. We did a table reading over Zoom for a really cool Western show that has like Western stuff in it from the 1800s plus spirituality. Like you go into the underworld and save people from demons and stuff like that. Anyways, so one day you guys will see that movie. And,
yeah, maybe if they make it.
Yeah,
it was a very ambitious script.
It was. There was a lot to it.
I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah.
And what's funny about that is it was almost like a serendipitous moment for us to meet, because I wasn't originally supposed to be at that read through. Adam had apparently another actor friend in the role, and he had to pull out. And so he was like, "Hey, are you available like kind of last minute?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not? I like doing read-throughs and table reads and things like that." So I popped on, and the rest was history.
And just happened.
I mean, we should have known though, because all the roles that I was reading for were all of like the older. They were like the elder and like the old Native American type roles, and I was like, that's not my typecast at all. But it was fun. It was a good script. Yeah.
Yeah, you did great. I thought you did really well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got to be a cowboy and a couple other roles. We all had to do several roles because there was quite a few different characters in that, and that was super fun. So, but other than that, we hardly really know anything about each other. So, but of course, now that you said that you're an astrologer, I kind of want to dig into that a bit. So, are you a professional astrologer?
I am. I've been a practicing astrologer, as in I've been doing readings and things like that for at least the last 5 years.
All right. Yeah. Is that Western or Vedic or both, or?
So here's the thing, and this is gonna go down a whole different rabbit hole. I do what is called true sidereal astrology, which is in the same branch as Vedic, but it's still slightly different.
Okay. So what I know about Vedic is that Vedic, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what Vedic astrology figures out where the signs are based on the constellations, and they're always line up with the stars, whereas Western, the signs are more sort of an abstract slice of the sky that slowly drifts. So the background stars actually over time drift through the different constellations. Is that correct?
Yeah, you must have got it. So an easy way to kind of think about it in the way that I kind of talk about it is that Western astrology is called tropical astrology because it follows the tropics, the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn, the Tropic of Aries, all those kinds of things. And that's based essentially on seasonal patterns. It's based on weather patterns. So tropical astrology is based on weather. Vedic astrology is based on constellations and the stars. You're absolutely correct. So an Vedic astrologer would look up and say, hey, the sun is in the constellation of Leo, therefore we are in Leo season. However, a tropical astrologer would say, well, we kind of fixed a calendar to say that Leo season would be the end of summer, and we're never going to change it ever for the history of time. So
okay, so what you're saying is, in other words, you divide everything up into 2 solstices and 2 equinoxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you divide up the sky, and then within that you divide those into 3s, and you end up with 12 signs, right?
Yeah, and it gets very confusing, to be honest, but to this day, I don't give any merit to Western astrology anymore at all.
Great.
And the reason because is, and this could, I mean, this could be too much information, but I already have a kind of bias against um, things that were touched by the dogma of religion.
Okay.
And way back, 2,000 years ago, there was a guy named Claudius Ptolemy, who was a theologian at the time of ancient Greece.
He was
And
also an astronomer too, right? Ptolemy?
it's interesting. Some books label him an astronomer, some books label him an astrologer slash mathematician, but overall, across the board, everyone can agree on that he was a theologian. So
Oh,
it's
okay. All right.
it's interesting. But
Okay.
at the time, for whatever reason, people were starting to kind of lose traction with astrology a little bit. Because I mean, this has been around for 40,000 years, this topic, this subject. And for 80% of that time, it was mostly just people just following the track of the moon and saying,
Now,
okay,
hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. I already
go for it.
derailed you because 40,000 years is a bit farther back than what most historians consider civilization to have existed.
Exactly. Yeah. And the reason why I say 40,000 years is because of the archaeological evidence that they have found,
Okay.
like bone carvings and rock carvings and cave drawings of stars and constellations and things like that.
Okay.
Like, that dates back all the way to 40,000 years. So people being around that time, looking up into the sky, looking at the moon and being like, what the heck's that about? And that they had to carve it. They become so obsessed about it that they had to carve it in bones and created a lunar calendar that they followed so that they could track where the animals were, what they were doing, what kind of energy the animals had, when they could plant seeds, when they needed to harvest grain, when they needed to harvest farmland, all those kinds of things. So like we're looking at a big topic that's been around forever. But for
Wait just a
80% of that
sec,
time,
because I thought we switched from hunter gatherer to agrarian only a few thousand years ago.
it wasn't that long ago. It
Okay.
was so, and this is where I'm getting at, is because
Okay.
so Ptolemy comes around in ancient Greece
Okay.
and he says, okay, so everyone's following the moon, everyone's starting to dig into astrology, and people are starting to kind of lose out on what it really is about. It has nothing to do with spirituality. This is his claim. It has nothing to do with spirituality. It has nothing to do with personality. It has nothing to do with science. I mean, sorry, it has nothing to do with the divine. It's a science that's just dictated to talk about weather patterns. And it's based on the weather patterns that give us our temperaments. This is why people who are born in hot climates are more easygoing and more laid back, and it's harder to be productive, or things like that. Like he literally wrote
Oh.
4 books, put them together, called the Tetrabiblos, and said, this is seasonal, it's physical, has nothing to do with God, has nothing to do with the divine, whatever that is. And so he
It has nothing to
created
do with
this
the
calendar.
planets then. Okay.
It has nothing to do with the constellations, the stars, the signs. He said it's merely just the fact that the sun gets closer to Earth, these planets get closer to Earth, or they get further away. And depending on how close they are to Earth, that changes our weather and that changes our temperament. And so he wrote 4 books,
What he
created
said.
tropical. So according to him, he created tropical astrology and said we need to stop looking at the stars. The stars, it has nothing to do with the stars. We don't even know if they're there. We don't even know if they're still there. They could have burned out like a long time ago. And so as he started pushing this narrative that it was a science and not spirituality, during the rise of the Western church, all of the Judeo-Christian faiths,
Hmm.
and when they started coming into play, they said, you know what? I think he's on to something, because we don't want astrology competing with God. We don't want people to think that they can do divination, that they can do
Hmm.
predictions, that they can tell people who they are and that they have a
Right.
purpose.
Right.
And so they started to say, okay, let's start banning astrology from being practiced. We'll
Hmm.
leave it as that seasonal farmers, like kind of seasonal pattern thing. And we'll just never talk about it ever again. We'll never talk about it. Anyone who practices it is a witch. We'll start
Hmm.
killing them. We'll start
Yeah.
beheading them. And we
Burn them
just
at
won't
the
talk about
stake.
it. So
Yeah.
it became a very taboo topic. And then as we started getting closer to today's day and age, which is, I mean, the psychology behind astrology it's only come around since 1930.
Oh,
So
really?
that's
It's that
like,
recent? Western
it's
astrology
that
is that recent?
recent. The
Whoa, I did not know
psychology,
that.
the psychology of astrology is only from the 1930s with the discovery of Pluto. And that's why Pluto is associated with this kind of deep psyche planet energy. But anyways,
Whoa,
all of this
whoa,
kind of,
whoa, whoa. Okay.
It's crazy. But so I'll make it short because I could ramble about this forever. But long story short,
Well, I have another friend who's an astrologer, so I mean, I've talked about this in pretty deep detail before, but
oh
it's
yeah.
interesting. Let's keep going with that. So, because
So
I would
so
love to
just
get into your theory of what. So you don't buy any of the. Well, but you still do. I mean, do you still? I mean, we used like for example, I'm in Aries with Virgo rising, and I got my Moon in Gemini, and like I've got Mars in my eighth house, and it's squaring. What is it squaring? It's squaring something, which causes some various things. So I've looked deep into my chart, and I'm like, well,
yeah.
all these things actually do show up in my personality.
Yeah.
So,
So in my astrology, I would say that you're not an Aries sun at all, that you're actually a Pisces sun.
mhm,
And what's interesting to me and why I'm like,
March
oh wow,
27th. Well, I'm
I didn't
March
know you were a
27th,
singer.
so maybe I would still be
So
of Aries.
in my astrology, the sun would have been in the constellation of Pisces when you were born, suggesting
The
that you
whole
will.
thing's off by 30 degrees. Okay.
So so the reason why that is because, and this is where I'm getting to, the Earth shifts on its axis. Now we know, based on science and based on all the things that we're studying, the Earth shifts on its axis every day. Well, one time, it shifts on its axis by one day every 71 years. And
Right. It's
so
because of
this
the
is what
wobble, right?
and so because of the wobble,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
And so this is what astrologers call the precession of the
Right.
equinoxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And around the time when Ptolemy was trying to create tropical astrology, he wanted to fix the wobble. He wanted to fix precession of the equinoxes because they didn't want to change their calendars every 71 years. So he created tropical so that it would be more consistent with the weather patterns of the northern hemisphere, so they wouldn't have to change their calendars ever. But as we know, obviously that's not how science works. That's not how things work. So
Right.
when you go 2,200, 2,500 years into the future or whatever, and
Right.
you're counting up the 71-year mark, we've shifted about 30 days off from where the calendars actually were. So when you look to where the planets are today, you'll see
hmm
it's nowhere close, and it's usually a complete sign off from what people are used to.
Okay, so all right, so then we have to get into okay, scientists are going to say this is all bullshit. It's all made up and it's not even worth discussing. But then
Yeah.
those of us who think scientifically and also metaphysically think, well, I mean, there's got to be something to it because I've done my chart and it's just not all purely random.
Yeah.
So, um, is it that there's these magical energies coming from all the zodiacs that influence us, or is it more like, maybe what it is that we have a group consciousness where within our human group consciousness there is this thing called astrology, and within that we've all sort of agreed that Aries people are like this. Therefore, since the consensus is that this I'm in Aries, then that consensus and that group belief actually causes me to have an Aries personality.
Mm.
Does that make any sense what I just said?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful question, and I like the way you put that together. Because to be honest, I do believe that there are aspects of the human psyche that are very impressionable. And when you're kind of told something over and over and over again, you try to rationalize the truth behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, I tried to rationalize my old chart when I first dived into astrology, because I started with Western astrology, and I was like,
Okay.
oh, okay. So I'm a Libra ascendant Virgo with an Aries moon. So I'm gonna look at what all those kinds of aspects mean,
Oh, you're very
and then
similar. So you're just got different planets, but they're similar energies, though.
a different configuration. So
Of
that's
course,
my
the Libra is the
tropical
opposite of
chart.
Aries. Okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
see, the thing
So
is like I am nothing like I am just a total Aries. The way that I express myself, I am not like a Pisces.
no,
I mean, I do
you don't
have
think so?
I have Mercury in Pisces, so which is the worst spot for it. So it just causes me to be a space cadet. So I do have that Piscean, whatever you call it, empathy. But the way
Mhm.
that I express myself is very Aries and very in your face. Just go for it.
Yeah.
So is that and that I've always been that way, even before I even knew anything about astrology.
Yeah.
So how do we explain that?
So one of the things that I've come to learn about astrology overall in general, and this
Hmm.
isn't to like insult anyone's intelligence, but I really feel like a lot of people, they don't quite still understand how all the pieces fit together with astrology.
But it's very
Like
complex, that's for sure.
because it's such a complex system, and
Right?
usually what people do with tropicals, they say you're an Aries, they're taking the culmination of the entirety of you and they're saying this is what we're going to see, this is what we're going to expect, and then any kind of thing that you do that remotely resembles that, they're going to call it out so that they bring
Right. Yeah.
attention to it. But
And
what's
that's what
interesting
Neil
is as
deGrasse
you're
Tyson would say. It's all horseshit because everybody's just sort of fitting it into their predisposed,
right,
they're all just
but
sort of rationalizing it
they're
based
having
on their
to
belief.
rationalize, and
Right.
that's like the big point, is that they're having to rationalize why it works. But if you actually look at your true sidereal chart, you won't have to rationalize it at all. You see it very clearly. So I try to rationalize for a long time why people thought, or why I was labeled a Libra ascendant Virgo sun with a Leo moon, or an Aries moon. And then I found out where the energy actually comes from, and that's I'm a Leo sun, I'm a Virgo ascendant, and I'm a Pisces moon, which makes far more sense to me. That any outside of rationalization I could do, I just see it and it's just there now. And that will
Well, I could
forever be
totally see
my
you as a
truth.
Pisces moon, actually.
I'm a total Pisces moon.
Yeah.
The way that I
Okay.
process my instinctual ability to survive and go through life is a chameleon. I either
Hmm.
hide and just pretend like I don't exist and I be a spectator, or I take on the energy of the person that I'm with, and that's kind of my survival mechanism. That's what the moon sign's about.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
like my whole sun, my ego is I want to perform, I want to be seen, I want to be acknowledged,
The
I
Leo.
want to
Yeah.
feel special. That's
Right.
what gives me a sense of joy. It
Mm.
boosts up my ego, and it's like that's so much more on point than the other chart. So what's great about Neil deGrasse,
Neil
is the
deGrasse
fact that
Tyson.
he bashes astrology so much,
Hmm.
but the reason why he bashes astrology is exactly the reasons why I follow true sidereal astrology, because it's scientific, and this is what I wanted to. You mentioned that, like, does it have to do with the constellations, or are we making this up? 100%. This has nothing to do necessarily with the constellations, and here's the thing, and you'll probably love this. So, knowing that you're a singer, knowing that you're a musician, that you're in that kind of world,
Right.
we have found that the planets hold frequencies like music notes.
Right.
And depending on which part of the sky they're in, they play a different frequency, or the vibrational pull, the gravitational pull of that planet vibrates at a different frequency.
Hmm.
So, depending on which part of the sky it's in, it plays a chord. And
Hmm.
that chord either vibes with you or it doesn't. And
Hmm.
so, they're talking about how when you're listening to music, it's not something that you necessarily, it's not like something you see, it's not something necessarily that you can touch, but the resonance chords, it hits a specific part of your body, it elicits a response, and based on your emotional response, you take action on something, or either you relax, you dance, you cringe, you want to turn something off. And so when the planets are in a particular part of the sky, we don't see the energy, we don't hear it, but we feel that energy. It's an energetic frequency. And so when I tell people, it's not about the constellations, it's not about the signs, it's about the planets. What
Hmm.
we do with the constellations is we just map out the sky so that we know which part of the sky those planets are pulling on Earth from.
Hmm.
And that is the vibrational frequency that we get. Those are the energies. And if you're looking at astrology as a whole, 40,000 years of observation of staring at the stars, staring at these planets, and seeing these consistent things over and over and over and over again, making our best hypothesis, making our best detailed guesses of what those mean based on observations, that in itself is a form of science. Science is a method. It's a way to derive at a particular answer based on observation and writing down the data from those
Right.
observations.
So it's
That's all
very
we're doing with
empirical.
astrology.
It would be
Yeah.
very empirical, right? Even though we don't
Yeah.
have a real solid explanation of exactly how it works besides what you just described in sort of
Right.
vague terms. So I think what you're saying is the constellations are sort of signposts, but then we're back to this thing where like these different regions of the sky have their own sort of intrinsic energy, and that the planets sort of focus that energy and create a certain resonant frequency that our psyche is very well attuned to.
Hmm.
So it's not really
Yeah.
gravity. Like what Neil deGrasse Tyson would say, well, the planet Mars has less gravitational effect on you than this coffee cup does. They say stuff like that.
Right. Right.
So it's not
But I
the
mean,
gravitational pull, it's more like some kind of resonant energy frequency
well,
that
I mean, if
you're
the
extremely
gravitational pulls of Saturn and the moon, or Jupiter and the moon, sorry, can literally tilt Earth on its axis, and that's why we have a wobble. Why we would be ignorant to think that that couldn't affect us on the planet if it affects the entire rock that we live on. That's crazy.
right. Yeah. So, okay. So
But
then,
anyways,
okay, so let me ask you this. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, suppose we lived on a planet on the other side of the galaxy, um, would would the same set of astrological phenomenon happen over there, do you think?
I mean, in retrospect, yeah, it would just depend on the planets that were involved and
I mean,
which
obviously
parts
the
of the sky
planets would be
that they were
different in a
in.
different solar system. The planets are
Yeah,
different, but
everything would be
the
completely
sky,
different. But
the zodiacs or the energies of the like. Do you think these energies are like way beyond? They go all the way to the edge of the universe, or if it's just energies within our own galaxy, or has
I'm
anybody
not sure.
bothered to theorize any of that?
I don't know. I know what I understand is that the basis of astrology is still a geocentric viewpoint because we're on this planet in this particular time.
Okay.
And so, based on us looking into the ecliptic and looking at which planets are in which constellations, the planets consistently over and over and over again, they travel the same celestial highway. It doesn't matter how much time has passed, it doesn't matter what has happened on Earth, the planets are still consistent. It's still the same planets going through the same constellations, and those are the constellations that we call the zodiac because those are the only ones that the planets always seem to consistently travel through over millennia, over
Okay.
thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, so you have this special. It's called True Sidereal. Is what yours is called.
True
So,
sidereal.
so what's the difference between yours and Vedic?
So Vedic still takes the notion like tropical astrology, where they take the 12 signs and they divide the sky evenly amongst those 12 signs. True sidereal says no, because based on the actual sizing of the constellations, Virgo takes up 50 degrees of our sky, not 30. So therefore, in true
Oh.
sidereal astrology, Virgo is going to be 50 degrees.
Whoa,
Aries is
whoa.
only a 20. Yeah, Aries is only a 23-degree constellation, not 30. So you can't divide the sky 30 degrees for Aries because the planets only travel in that constellation for 3 weeks, not a month. So true sidereal takes in the actual sizing of the constellations into consideration, and it's left astrology completely untouched. Nothing is altered. Nothing is made to fit an agenda, fit a type of system. It is taking the sky face value and saying the sun in the ecliptic, like today, for example, the sun entered the constellation of Libra in true sidereal astrology. If we were to look up into the sky, follow the ecliptic, the sun would be in Libra today. So today would be the official start of Libra season, not way back when in September 23rd. Now
Okay,
Vedic,
so just I have a question. So how
yeah,
does
yeah.
true sidereal make it where some signs are bigger than others? How does that work?
So because of the different sizings, they give the sky its equal share depending on how big the constellation is. And so what that kind of suggests in true sidereal astrology is that we need more of a certain sign's energy than others. For an example, like I said, Virgo being this 50-degree constellation in our sky, that suggests that we need more Virgos on this planet, more people who are there following a routine. They're being helpful. They're being assisting. They are trying to work. They're trying to make sure that the day-to-day operations are running efficiently, as opposed to a 23 degree, which is more than half the size of Virgo. In Aries, we need less warriors, less pioneers. Because in retrospect, in the way we want to function in society, we need more helpers than warriors. We're not going to need like a whole planet full of people that are out there fighting or out there trying to pioneer something new. We need people that are there to help on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so hold on. So, now is this always that way, or does Virgo and Aries shrink and expand over time?
So according to true sidereal astrology, it's based on just where they are now. So true sidereal astrology is a relatively new concept. People didn't even form true sidereal until almost the birth of computers, where people
Okay.
could look up stuff on their own and say, wait a second, why is this planet not where the astrologers say it is? That's kind of how early or how late in the game true sidereal is. But in terms of the constellations, whether or not they grow or expand, I can't say.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a lot. It's a lot of information to take in.
Okay. So once you've decided that you have your map of the sky has the constellations in different places and different sizes,
Mhm.
but then the interpretation is still pretty much the same. Like a Virgo and your version of in True Sidereal still be have the same Virgonian qualities that we're used to.
So for the most part, the archetypes still ring true very well.
Okay.
There is some overlap that gets miscommunicated. For an example, just to give some examples, um, when people are looking at, let's say, the end of August, people are naturally they think that is the time of Virgo. So they're looking at these people and they're looking at this group of people and they're seeing that they have ungodly standards. And therefore, that gets labeled on those people that they're perfectionists because Virgo has this perfectionistic quality to it.
Hmm.
However, if we're looking at the actual constellation, the actual planets, we're seeing the sun is in Leo. And when you look at the archetype of Leo, Leo has a God complex. They hate anything that falls underneath them being the best versions of themselves because they don't like being flawed. They don't like being flawed humans. So
Yeah.
there is an overlap where
Okay.
people label the perfectionistic tendency of the Leo wanting to be a godlike person, and that kind of gets mixed.
Hmm.
Another example could be the fact that Aquarius, they're kind of seen as this kind of lone wolf, and Pisces is the sign that likes to go into solitude. So those two
Okay.
things overlap.
Okay.
But Aquarius is a self-generated prophecy where they don't want people to get to know them. So they rebel against the friendship and they go off and be by themselves. They alienate themselves and then they
Plus,
wonder why they don't have
the
any friends.
Aquarians are very much aloof, whereas Pisces are very the opposite of being aloof.
It's
Would you
more of
say?
it's more of a with Aquarius, it's more of like a detriment of an ego of not realizing that they're not really that important. So they kind of go off and rebel against the social norm, as
Okay.
opposed to Pisces that they feel so much energy around with a bunch of different people that
Hmm.
they can get overstimulated to the fact that
Hmm.
they need to decompress. They
Hmm.
need to have time alone. And it's a healthy thing rather than a self generated thing, if that
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, I mean, literally an hour ago, I was reading a passage from Mozart's Letters,
Yeah.
this book. And of course, we all know that Mozart was an Aquarius.
Mm.
So there we go. Of course, I don't know. January 27th, so what would he be in True Sidereal?
So January 27th would make him a Capricorn.
Oh, how
Yeah.
boring.
It's not
Of
boring.
course, Capricorn actually, well, he was a terrible businessman, but he certainly was an excellent composer.
Yeah. So, but
Hmm.
see, and here's the thing also is when you're looking at true sidereal astrology, the sun sign is not necessarily supposed to be a fun personality breakdown quiz. It's supposed to be your contract for growth in your contract for joy in this life. So
Oh,
just because you're a Capricorn sun doesn't mean that you need to be good at business. We see a lot of Librans and a lot of Sagittarians are actually the ones that are really good at business because they're amazing at networking. But
okay.
Capricorn is all about leaving a legacy behind and
Well,
just
I certainly left a
creating something.
legacy. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's
Hmm.
fascinating. But what I'd love to say, and if you want to move on to a different topic, we can move on. But that's why I love that. Yeah, you told me that you sang because Pisces is the sign that rules over music. And it's the sign that is really indoctrinated into the romanticism of music and singing and composing. So
Hmm.
they're natural poets. So I love that.
Well, I'm also a
Anyways,
composer too. So,
look at that.
hmm, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to
Okay.
think about.
Well, now I'm gonna have to have you do my true sidereal chart
We'll
after
have to do
this.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then you've been doing astrology for only 5 years.
For
But were you
5 years.
interested in it? Were you into it before that? Before you became a professional?
I was always into it.
Okay.
Anything that I ever read, I was like, okay, yeah, I can see that kind of Virgo-ness, sure. And I would
Okay.
literally go around and high five other Virgos because I thought we were the best sign ever. That's a Leo trait. But
Yeah.
anyways, I didn't find out about true sidereal astrology until probably the middle of 2019, just before going into the pandemic. And so when that kind of happened and I wasn't able to perform anymore, I literally became obsessive about it and did nothing but research and study, read books, talk to people, do webinars, like watch videos about astrology, Vedic astrology, true sidereal, what that means. And then around 2020 is when I started doing more true sidereal readings. And ever since then, I haven't ever gone back to anything else because it's been so accurate.
Okay, so now what do we do about so suppose I do my true sidereal chart, and then what am I supposed to do with my Western chart? Just
Throw it
throw it out
out,
the door?
throw it away.
So everything I've lived up to this point is all a lie?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I was just a fake. It wasn't my true self. It was just like,
No. And that's one of the things that people kind of talk about now is we kind of had this weird awakening, right? In
okay,
2020 when we started feeling like all the stuff that we thought we knew is starting to slowly like lift as like this veil is lifting, or all these things we thought uh, that were going around the world, they're completely almost not even true anymore. So we're really
okay,
questioning a lot of what's going on in the world right now. We're questioning our government, we're questioning our
right.
rules, we're questioning beliefs, international trade, culture, racism. We're really kind of pulling all the things up to the surface at the moment. And so it's like
Everything's gonna
the
upheave, that's for sure. On the
COVID in a
eve
way kind of,
of the election
yeah,
tomorrow, we're gonna, well,
right.
we're gonna be in a whole new world. Who
It's gonna
knows?
be. It's gonna be a whole new
Yeah.
world. A whole new world.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
You're gonna want to marinate with this energy, with this information.
Yeah. So, okay, then besides astrology, then you have another whole other spiritual life too, right? I assume.
To be honest, no. I was raised Roman Catholic,
Okay.
and my mom put me through Sunday school and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it was fun for a time because
Okay.
all we did was sing and draw and things like that.
Oh, that sounds
But I
fun.
remember, I remember my dad getting very angry at my mother for putting us through Sunday school because I'm pretty sure well, at the time he was atheist. So it was kind of like a battle of my mom strong arming this belief in
Hmm.
spirituality and God and religion, and my
Hmm.
dad being anti religion and anti God and all those kinds of things. And I remember I heard him argue with her, and he's like, "You need to let our children decide what they want to believe." And
Right.
I remember just because he said that, I remembered having this thought as a kid. Well, I want to appease my father. I want to make sure that I don't know, for one reason or another, he sees me, and so I was like, okay, yeah, I don't want to go to Sunday school, and so my mom's like, okay, fine, I won't force you
That
to go
was
to
it.
Sunday school, and that was like kind of already kind of ingrained in my head to be kind of against that, and then as I started going to school and interacting with people and learning more about science and things like that, I remember my mom used to tell me, "Oh, the it rains anytime the angels are crying for the world and they're just trying to water and heal the planet with their tears, and thunders them playing bowling." And then I go to school and they're talking about the precipitation of water and how it rises, it gets stuck in the air, evaporation, and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is the rain system. I was like, Mom, like everything you told me was a lie. And so it kind of started to feed that seed that was already in my head. And I had a friend at the time that I used to walk home from school to home with, and I think I was like 8 years old. And I remember going into her house, and she had white walls, Christian crosses everywhere, covering the entire house. Lots of like Saint Mary candles and things like that.
Definitely
And
Catholic.
I
Yeah.
remember looking at her and going, "Wow, so like you're really religious. This is what are you Christian?" She goes, "Yeah, of course I am. Are you?" And I was like, "Well, no, no, I'm not." I said, "I was raised Roman Catholic." I didn't know what that meant at the time. I was like, "I was raised Roman Catholic." She's like, "But wait, so you don't believe in God?" And I said, "I don't think so. I don't know." And she literally retracted from me and almost looked like she was disgusted. And she pulled her dog away from me so that I wouldn't touch her dog. And she kicked me out of her house. And at eight,
Satan.
yeah, and so at eight
Yeah.
years old, I'm like, okay, so all these seeds are starting to line up. The rain has nothing to do with angels. Thunder has nothing to do with God. My dad doesn't believe in religion. These people that I was friends with that are Christian have just rejected me for not following their beliefs. Like, there's a lot of darkness here. There's a lot of stuff that I kind of want to stay away from.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, from that point on, those kind of three things kind of sealed the deal when I was a kid.
Okay.
And as I started getting older, I stopped believing in religion. I stopped kind of believing in spirituality. It's not like I ever prayed or anything like that. But for whatever reason, I always had this feeling in the back of my mind or in the back of my heart that there has to be something out there. And when I started diving into astrology, and I was like, oh, like maybe this could be where some of the draw comes from. Maybe it's celestial, because in my mind, I was still trying to think of more scientific things. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, maybe these planets are tugging on us. And then as I started going and down the rabbit hole when I was older, and I
Mm-hmm.
actually was like more interested in studying versus doing other things, recreational things,
Mm-hmm.
I started learning how far the rabbit hole goes with astrology, and there's a lot of religious texts, there's a lot of religious stories. Take it from a bunch of different types of religions, and they all point to celestial phenomenon.
Right.
Like they're talking about how around the winter solstice, the sun goes away and disappears, but then it returns on the 25th of September, almost
Mm-hmm.
like this rise of the sun, and then that's like become like the birth of Christ kind of thing. It's very, very hard for me not to see that these parallels anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
now my spirituality is like totally there. I'm like, okay, now I'm into rocks, I'm into gems, I'm into sound baths, I'm into like meditative practices, astrology, tarot, like all those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of kind of new age things now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of my spirituality nowadays, and that's kind of what I kind of hold as my belief system and my religion, because everything always goes back to it now. Long story short, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, okay. So, in the context of your current spirituality,
Yeah.
what would your best definition of God be?
So I nowadays just use the word God as universe. It's just
Okay.
it's a cosmic synchronicity. The planets are doing something. We're feeling that synchronicity. We're making sense of it, and there is a divine order to that kind of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of just what I hold to as my belief now. Is it's planetary energy. So
Okay, so that's sort of like for me, that would be a definition of the let's say the framework of creation or the universal laws,
mm,
but it wouldn't be actually the creator.
yeah,
So,
I
like in
don't
your
understand.
definition, is like okay, so of course now people are starting to doubt the Big Bang.
Right.
That's starting to become a thing. But let's just say that the Big Bang actually did happen. So, like,
Yeah.
what would you explain? Was there something there before the Big Bang, before space and before time, that the Big Bang happened within?
I mean, honestly, the best answer is the worst answer, and it's the I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. In astrology, it would be they talk about how the first age was the age of Leo, and it kind
Okay.
of follows that same type of what you're talking about. There was some type of creation. There was some kind of spark of something that birthed life. It just came out of nowhere. It just happened because, it talks about in the Bible, first there was darkness and then there was light. And you're looking in space, like first it's darkness, and then
Mm.
the age of Leo comes where the sun births and pops up into space. Sun rules over Leo. Leo has to do with this holding the gravitational center of the galaxy. So then you're getting this sun. What is the sun? It magnetizes all the planets, it magnetizes all of these things to it, and it creates order in the chaos. It is the light in the dark, it is the
Mm.
warmth in the cold,
Hmm.
and it pulls things together. And it pulled all these planets in a particular way that life was able to spawn on Earth. And you can go as far back as when people talk about how there actually wasn't life on Earth until the moon crashed into Earth and brought some kind of alien energy that wasn't of Earth. It crashed into Earth, it bounced back, it got stuck in its orbit, and it was from that impact that birthed some kind of organism.
Right.
And what follows the age of Leo is the age of Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, which is the divine feminine, and talking about how
Right.
this entity came in through the mystical waters. We created water on this planet, and that was able to form some kind of organism. It's very weird. So the best answer is I don't know,
Okay.
but it
Well, then
does seem
there
to.
another answer or another response could be, well, who cares? Like,
It
who
doesn't
cares
really
if there
matter,
was a
does it?
creator or
Because we're
not?
here now,
So
right?
then you get into the idea, well, okay, so if there is a God, I mean, does this God just sort of hang out and watch, or does he or she actually intervene every once in a while, and therefore it's good to pray to this God, or things like that, you know?
I don't
Or
know.
does
There's a
everything
lot of.
all just happen according to the clockwork of the universal laws? I mean,
Yeah.
it's okay. So there's okay. So then, what's your definition of the soul?
So the soul. Well, now that I'm into astrology, I do believe in past lives. That's not something that I believed in before.
Okay,
So I
reincarnation.
think yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So I
Okay.
think, to
So
be
do I, by the
honest,
way.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the
I'm a
soul
yogi.
is the best definition of untapped energy, untapped potential. So when you think of giving something a soul, you're infusing it with a fighting spirit of some sort, um, some kind of reason for it being alive, a reason for it existing, kind of thing.
Mm.
And I tell people all the time in my readings, like, obviously, before you were reincarnated, before you came into this earth as Matt Weiss, your soul existed in time and space.
Hmm.
And it was the universe that came together to take your energy and decide that it wanted to give you a physical manifestation and says, what's the one thing you want for yourself in this next lifetime? And for you, in my astrology, that answer was peace. The one word you asked for was peace. And so your soul was formed around discovering inner peace and what that means,
You mean me
and being
personally, or just a typical human?
you personally, because of the type of solar contract you have as a
Oh,
Pisces sign
as a
in my
Pisces.
astrology.
Mm.
But I feel like the soul is just this untapped energy that has been recycled from somewhere to give a manifestation of a physical form to do something on this planet. Um, I guess that's the best I can describe it. Or the other answers again is I don't know, or does it really matter?
Okay, what do you think of the notion that the soul, the individual soul, and the universal soul ultimately are one and the same, or are not separate from each other?
I think, well, that's a beautiful concept, right? Because if you're looking at the earth as a whole, we see those resemblances within ourselves. Our
Mm-hmm.
lung is the air shifting through all the seasons, bringing change to the body. We have
Okay.
water. Our blood is the water flow. It flows through our veins like riverbeds, and it brings oxygen and nutrients to the certain different parts of our body. You
Mm-hmm.
look at the brain and all the nerves; they're
Mm-hmm.
trees. It's the tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a beautiful symbiosis, of course, and maybe that's where they bring the term of like we are created in the image of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as we know, the only thing that's really divine is the planet that we live on and kind of Mother Nature, and how everything seems to be chaotic. Everything seems to be completely coincidental. But when you really think about it, everything has a specific reason on why it happens. And we're still trying to make sense of that. Like our brains and consciousness is still relatively a new thing, like compared to the longevity of how long human species has been
Mm-hmm.
around. This sense of consciousness, we're still trying to figure it out.
Okay, so okay, good. I'm glad that you brought that up. So, okay. So most scientists will believe that consciousness somehow magically arises in a brain that's complex enough that at a certain point there's enough neural pathways and can do complex enough patterns that somehow consciousness arises sort of magically. And there's people that believe that the same thing will happen with computers at some time, or maybe it already has happened with AI.
With AI.
Okay. But I'm not of that. I'm not of that philosophy. I'm of the camp that says no. Consciousness is not. It's definitely not a product of the complexity of some system.
Hmm.
Consciousness is actually something that is always there in anything. In fact, it's impossible for anything to exist without consciousness being there to experience it. Or let's say, instead of using the word consciousness, let's say awareness.
Hmm.
Like I would say that if you had a universe that was all it was one electron and one proton, for example, a really simple universe where that's all there is in the universe is an electron and a proton. It would be literally impossible for that electron and proton to exist unless there was awareness there to be aware of it. So
Hmm.
awareness is a prerequisite to any kind of creation or any kind of existence.
That's fascinating.
So that's where I come from.
Yeah, I'll have to think. I'll be thinking about that probably all night. um, yeah, interesting. The conscious, you'd have to be aware in order for it to be exist. That
And
almost
it's
kind of
not, you
reminds
can't,
me of
even if
that.
you say you have to be aware, even that already has, you've divided you and some other thing that you're perceiving, right?
Hmm.
So I'm saying you have to pull it back even farther than that till you have to get to a point where all there is awareness. And that's like the ground. That is like the ultimate reality. It's just yes, there no matter what you do, no matter what you pull back, there will always be awareness
Hmm.
till there's nothing left to pull back, and then you just have just pure awareness, and then from there, now you can create objects within this awareness, and then boom, there's all of creation. But if you take the awareness away, creation immediately disappears because nothing can exist if there's nothing aware of it. It doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely something I'll have to ponder for sure. Because then I guess the see, I don't know if I'm just mind tripping myself out then. So then where does the confusion come from in delineating actual reality.
Right. Well, it's because we have, okay, let's get into this a little bit. So it's really hard for us to identify ourselves as nothing but pure awareness. Have, we identify with this sort of object shroud that's around our awareness, that's our body and our mind and our feelings and all these things, which are really kind of like sheaths or clothing of objects. It's super hard for us to have enough focus and to just be pure awareness. It's so much easier, and we're so used to finding something to identify with.
Mm.
Like my nose or my glasses, or I'm into Star Trek, or I'm in
Right.
Aries or whatever. It's so we just there's such a strong pull to identify. We have this thing, which again you would in Sanskrit you'd call it the ahamkara, the I-ness, or the ego is built into us that immediately wants it's ultimately considered false, but it immediately wants to identify with something.
Mm.
There's this constant urge to immediately identify with something because it's too hard just to be pure awareness.
Yeah.
To exist as an individual pseudo separate being within this universe, we seem to have this ego quality there constantly telling us that we're separate. Otherwise, we'd probably not be separate. We would just kind of go poof and go back to being everything.
Being everything. See, to me, my mind just goes straight to this. This is all Python talk of merging and becoming one. There is no separation between
Right.
us and the other. But then at the same time, then it's like, yeah, it's oh, okay. But at the same time, like there has to be like we're all connected. We're all made of the same consciousness. We're all made out of the same atoms. We give meaning to things that maybe don't need to have meaning, but at the same time, like they're then why are we separate? Or is that the illusion? Is that the biggest illusion of
Well,
life?
that's the whole point of creation is
Yeah,
the separateness, right?
right.
I mean, one way to think of it is it's just some big, super elaborate video game. You know,
The
like why do
theories
people like
get
to play
stronger
video
and stronger
games?
for this. Yeah,
The same reason. That's
being
why
a simulation.
that's the exact same reason why there is this creation we're living in. It's the same reason why people like video games. It's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So tap into that, figure out how to win at the game, and you'll be set. Whatever that means to you. Whatever winning the game.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm. Yeah. Okay.
What a fascinating conversation. Your
Okay.
audience members, are they used to these kinds of conversations? Because anyone else, I feel like some people that I know would come into this and just feel like they're floating in space. Like, what did I get myself into?
Well, you never know.
You never know.
So, did we did we solve anything, or did
You
we just
know,
sort of just float around?
well, that is the essence of Pisces, to just exist. Time is an illusion. We're just floating in time, just existing, just figuring out what is reality, and that's a beautiful thing in of itself. And that's why we need the balance. We need the balance of Pisces with Virgo. Of Virgo being okay. We have our fun. We get to monk out, but we also need to
Lay
be
some
productive.
bricks.
So we need to clean things, organize things, keep things hygienic, and then we can go back to that.
Okay, phew. And that's why we're on the Earth. And
And
that's
that's why
why, well,
we're
that
there.
makes sense that Virgo would get a nice larger chunk of the sky since Virgo is an Earth sign, and the point of being on the Earth is being in a physical reality that offers limitations, and those limitations give you challenges, and then those
Yeah.
challenges help you grow. I mean, that's basically the essence of most New Age philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Why we're
Earth,
even
yeah.
incarnating on the earth.
Otherwise, why have a physical body? Why have a physical
Yeah,
form?
just hang out in the ether and
Yeah.
just, you know,
Just think about ourselves and
just live in the
and
dream world all the time.
yeah. Yep.
Ooh, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
How you feeling? You doing great?
Yeah. Okay. And then somewhere along that magical journey, you became an actor.
Yes, somewhere along the medical. Well, and this is the thing that's funny is that I feel like that came first. Um, and this is a good blend between, again, I'm just maybe eventually I'll get away from the astrology talk, but the good blend between the Pisces and the Leos, because the Leo is the performer and the Pisces can be a storyteller to lose yourself in fantasy. So as a child, doing theater and things like that, it's always something that I've always just done. I've always kind of escaped because I never wanted to be myself. I always wanted to be something else or figure out what that could be.
The chameleon.
So I was a
Okay.
chameleon,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got to a point where I was. It was just a sense of play to be a different character, but I never really kind of took it seriously. But it's kind of always been there. And then when my dad was sent away to prison when I was 12,
Oh, whoa.
I, I was
Okay.
like, I had a hard hit of reality, and I was like, okay, like I don't need to be in fantasy land anymore because there is an actual reality of life here that I'm missing out on. And so I remember trying to take life more seriously when I was like 12 years old.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I was like, I'm gonna go to law school. I'm gonna get like a law degree. I'm gonna do some like investigative journalism on the side. Like I'm gonna do something that's like serious.
Okay.
And my sister, she signed me up for the school play when I was 15 years old, and didn't tell me that she signed me up for the school play.
Okay.
And at the end of class, at the end of school, I'm like, I've got my stuff on, I've got my backpack on. I'm like, hey, you like, teenage me, like, you ready to go? Like completely just bad teenage attitude. Let's go. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. And she's like, actually, you have an audition in like 3 minutes. And like, an audition for what? And she's like, I signed you up for the school play. And I was like, you did what? And I was so mad at her because I had already kind of had my path and figured out what I was going to do and all that kind of stuff. And she was like, yeah, you need to go there. I signed you up. This is your time slot.
I
And
assume
they'll
she's your
probably
older sister.
she's 16 months older than me. She's just a year older than me, but that's what my mom's always said, 16 months. I don't know why mothers always use months in terms of dating things, but yeah, she's just 1 year older than me. And so she signed me up. I went there after school. I raced into there because I didn't want to be late because I like being punctual. And
That's a
I
Virgo.
walked to the front, my Virgo ascendant, right? And I walked to the front, and they handed me a piece of paper, and they said, "Okay, you're next. Just tell us your name, and then just whenever you're ready, just give it a go." And I was so nervous that I just remember just like taking like I closed my eyes, I took a deep breath. I instinctively threw the script out of my hand. I threw the paper away, and I had the whole thing memorized, like super fast. Just completely hammed it up, made a fool of myself, and just was trying to do a really bad job because I didn't want the seriousness or the weight of being doing an audition and getting anything. But because I threw away the paper, was memorized, and made a fool of myself, they were like, this guy's great," and they gave me a big part in the play. And so
What play
I,
was it?
it was Sleepy Hollow, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Ooh.
And so I went up. They sent out the cast. They had me sign it. They said, "Okay, you're in the show." And at that point, I was like, "I can't believe you signed me up. I can't believe I got to do this. I can't believe I'm doing theater and I'm acting again. Like I let this go. This is like kiddie stuff." And then I met the theater kids, and they're just a special bunch of kids. Theater people are just strange people in general, but for whatever reason, they accept you. They make you they're one of their own, and they embrace you. And the second I met them, I was like, oh, I don't think I belong anywhere else than with these weird artists. And I stuck with theater, and I stuck with acting all throughout high school. I changed my trajectory. I went to college for music theater. I got a bachelor's in music theater.
Oh, you're a singer?
I was a singer. I hurt my vocal cords in the
Uh-oh.
summer of 2016. I can still sing, just not what I don't have the range I used to be. I used to be a baritone, so I could go down to a low C and then I could belt up to a G sharp, and that was kind of my range.
Okay.
But
Oh,
as
wow,
I
your
started,
voice sounds higher than that.
it does sound higher, but
Yeah.
it
Because I
I'm
consider myself a baritone and I can sing a G.
yeah,
I mean, of course, if you go into head voice, you can go higher, but
yeah,
on a really good day, I can sing a G sharp just barely. But
yeah.
wow. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
So so I did music theater. I had a music theater career in Colorado for 10 years.
Okay.
And I did nothing but theater. That was like my main source of income in Colorado. I was like
Wow.
so proud. I would make like $19,000 a year just doing theater in Colorado. And then I reached a point where I got, I don't know if it was time or whatever, but it started getting to me that I felt like I was going nowhere. I didn't really have
Right.
anywhere to climb.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told my friends, I told my family, I said, well, what if like I go off and do something in like one of the big states? And they were like, well, I mean, you don't really need to. Is that something you want to do? And they were like so passive about it that I didn't get that kind of, oh yeah, you should totally go for it. That's like kind of what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get that. So I kind of loosely did music theater for like the last year that I was in Colorado, and loosely started trying to venture out and find other jobs to do just in case. So
Okay.
I was like
And
aware, I was aware.
all your family lives in Colorado still?
They all live in Colorado.
Because
They're all in
surprisingly,
Colorado.
believe it or not, I just visited Denver for the first time in my life like 2 weeks ago.
You did. What'd you think?
I liked it. In fact, it
It's a
was
good city.
warm enough that I could wear shorts and sandals still, and it was like October.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's usual casual wear.
Yeah.
Maybe not the sandals. Maybe they'd switch it up with some good
Yeah.
tennies.
No, I was
But
wearing
yeah.
Birkenstocks.
Oh my goodness.
Birkenstocks and shorts and walking around.
Yeah, you and
Yeah.
my partner get along. She wears Birkenstocks everywhere, and I keep trying to get her to not wear Birkenstocks.
Good
But
luck.
they're comfy. Good luck. Yeah, I tell people Colorado's a place if you like beer and if you like mountains,
Okay.
if you like doing outdoorsy stuff, because that has the most breweries per capita. So you can find good beer anywhere you go in Colorado.
Okay.
I don't drink, but I just know this because I was a manager for the Denver Zoo, and they had this kind of retail section where they'd sell beer
Okay.
to the people walking around the zoo. And so I had to just know things about Colorado and about beer. I've
Okay.
never touched a lick of alcohol in my life,
Wow. Okay. That's
but
another
I do.
story then.
Yeah, that's another story. But I do tell
Okay.
people that. But I tried to do a bunch of things. I tried to work at
Do you
the
smoke
zoo. I tried.
pot at least?
No, I don't do
How about
anything.
mushrooms?
I've no nothing.
So you've never
My
done any mind-altering drugs?
Nothing at all. And it has nothing to do with any bad experiences. It's more of a control thing, to be honest. I don't like the idea of not being in my own having my inhibitions lowered. I like being in control of what I say and what I do at all times.
That's not very Piscean.
It's my Virgo ascendant
Okay.
for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, Pisces rules over wine and
Right.
loves the quote unquote addictive vices.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Wow.
But yeah,
Okay.
so I've done acting a lot, but I moved to California in 2021 and started doing film then. But up
Film.
until that point, all I did was music theater and plays.
Okay. Then what type of film stuff have you done?
So I did Bring Her to Me, which was a horror film kind of like around the same lines as kind of like Tales of the Crypt type of movie.
Okay.
I played this guy named Raziel who was like a demon, but when you looked on him naturally during the day, he was like this charming, good-looking dude, and then he would bring women to a place in the evening, and then he would become this like mangled, morphed demon creature, and he would sacrifice them to the devil. So I did
Yikes.
that. A lot of the, to be
You
honest, a
got any
lot of the,
Scorpio in your chart?
I have Scorpio in my second house, but that's about it. I have, well,
Okay.
no, I don't have any planets in Scorpio, oddly enough. But
Okay.
for whatever reason, when I was doing theater, everyone was like, okay, you're Romeo, or you're going to be the zany best friend who just never stops talking. And I was like, okay. And that's what I did. And when I came out here, the LA industry people looked at me and they said, okay, you're either going to play the serial killer or you're going to be the like the waiter or the servant or the aeroplane stewardess or whatever that is. Not stewardess. You're going to be a service industry type of person, and that's all I've
Butler.
gotten out here. Has been villain roles, and or I'm just like a casual assistant somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, you remember Ethan McDowell in our table read, right?
Yes.
Um, so that I mean, in real life, he's just the nicest guy. He's just like this total, like he reminds me like a fireman type of guy that would come and rescue your kitty from a tree.
Oh,
Super nice, but he always gets roles as villains. So,
that's interesting. I never realized how much out here in Hollywood, how much is based on your physical appearance.
yeah.
Because in theater, and this is interesting, maybe you have this experience in music. It's like if you're like a legit performer or whatever, like actors who are in theater, it's if you have talent, if you can act, you're gonna get cast as leads. You're gonna get cast in shows. In the music world, it's like if you can do opera, if you can do
You can
classical
sing.
trained stuff, you are a legit singer and you can pretty much do a lot of things. Your voice is very versatile.
Hmm.
And if not, and you're looking at like the more poppy industrial side of like the business of the entertainment business,
Hmm.
in film, they're like you got to be 6 foot tall and above and good looking, who can relatively act, kind of thing. You got to be good looking, or you got to be able to do something that's commercialized, like pop singing, or you got to be able to smile good on camera and sell a product or whatever that is. It's
Hmm.
a very big difference from my own experience of kind of going from one world to the other. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I see too. It's like, at least in film, it seems like, well, there's, it doesn't seem like having your acting ability and your chops don't really seem to matter that much. It's more like just there's just a certain look, and if you can sort of exude that people like, then you can end up
Yeah.
being popular.
There's
You know,
got to be something about you we can
a certain
sell. Either,
energy, sort of.
yeah.
Something how you look on camera, or how you smile, or whatever it is that has that magnetic quality that the camera picks up.
Hmm.
And if even
Absolutely.
if you're not that great of an actor, basically you have that, and then from there, then they're like, oh, give the person a few acting lessons so that they're halfway decent, and then you're fine.
Yeah.
That seems to be my assessment of how it works.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a very interesting world, and I can see why it gets so confusing for people that are trying to figure out the quote unquote the industry, because
Yeah,
there's no guide, there's no guidebook, there really is no path
yeah.
towards it. You either just create as much of your own stuff as you can and build connections that way, or
That
I guess, yeah,
that
right
seems
time,
to be
right
like the
place.
best. I think that's. I mean, of course, I'm not famous and I'm not a well-known actor or anything like that, but I
You're doing
mean,
great for yourself. 20,000 subscribers
I
on
know.
your.
Well, so with YouTube, you can just sort of produce your own show and you
Yeah.
can create your own roles and do it all yourself. And then the question is, well, is success? Is it 200 subscribers, 2,000, 20,000, or 200,000 or 2 million? Like, when do I decide that I've succeeded? And then
Right.
at some point you realize, well, those are just numbers. Those are just powers of 10. And what I realized too, since I'm a musician, I play all kinds of different types of gigs. Honestly, some of my favorite gigs are when I go and play at a retirement home and there's like 10 people in the audience. But those
Yeah.
10 people are usually some old ladies that are totally into it.
They love what
They
you're
love
doing.
it. In fact, all it takes is one person in that audience that's really into it that you connect with, and that's makes the whole thing worthwhile. You don't have to have
Right.
10,000 people out there, at least not for me at least.
Yeah. Because
So,
someone is there with the awareness of what you're doing, and
yeah.
therefore your art has the meaning.
Yeah. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the trick, of course, with that type of a setup is you have to have some other gig that makes money. So like me,
That's the
my
thing.
day job is an IT guy, so that's where I get my money that I can support all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's an interesting thing when you realize that you have to monetize on your passions or monetize on your dreams, and then there's this heaviness that comes in with it because then it seems like it's no longer for you and it's for a survival thing. And then that kind of cuts away some of the creativity because then you're becoming a content creator, like a content machine, as opposed to I was hit by the muse, this tune came to me and I created it and I
hmm
pumped it out. And it's a beautiful, pure piece of art that makes someone feel something as opposed to
right,
being like, oh shoot, well now I gotta go play a bar mitzvah,
right.
down the street to
Well,
be able to eat dinner.
but until you tell me that I don't have a Gemini moon, I'm still gonna lean into my Gemini moon, which allows me to switch modes and do both things, right? I can be
That's
the
Pisces.
violin player, the cello player, the singer, the composer, the whatever, and then I can turn around and be the IT guy and just
Yeah.
switch roles as needed.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to conflict with each other. They can all
So to
coexist.
me, now, in my mind, that tells me that you might be a Taurus moon, which is also one of the instrumentalists, is actually the person who's able to take something and create out of nothing. So having a stability, a stable job, a 9 to 5, that could be great because it gives you the stability for your Pisces moon, your Pisces sun to be able to create what you want to create. See?
Yeah.
Very fascinating.
Okay. We figured it all out.
We'll
Okay.
get into it. We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so let's circle back. I suppose we should wrap it up. Is there any
We
other
could probably talk forever, but yeah,
any
it's
other topic of great import that we should touch upon before saying
so.
goodbye?
To be honest, most of the things that I just like talking about nowadays is just astrology because to be honest, like no actor likes talking about acting. It's something they do. It's
Okay.
sometimes it's kind of hard to talk about. Like if you listen to actors actually talk about the process, they don't ever light up when they're talking about it unless they're talking about like a specific thing that they found interesting. But otherwise, it can be very dry. So
Okay.
I think we hit all the good stuff. But it's
Cool.
yeah, thanks for having me on this podcast. And
Certainly.
it's lovely to talk about the universe and what's reality and all that.
You too.
And yeah, it's
And
great.
Alex, I think I'm going to be in LA during Christmas. So, like, if a friend of mine's has got an Airbnb and they're going to do a Christmas party. So, if you need a place to go to, send me a text.
There you go. I will.
Yeah,
Um,
come on over.
will it be on actual Christmas?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
So, we're just starting to make the plans. At the Airbnb's in Culver City. I don't know where you live. If that's
We're in the
anywhere near you.
Palisades, Pacific Palisades, which is just left of Santa Monica. So it's
Oh,
close by.
that's pretty close,
Yeah.
right?
I will say, my mom is obsessed about Christmas. She buys plane tickets for me to come home and then tells
Oh,
me
okay.
I'm getting on the plane to come home. So I'm usually around exact Christmas, the 23rd to the 27th. I'm usually in Colorado for Christmas.
Okay.
But if there's any time around that and you're in town, yeah, we can go
Are
and
you
grab lunch or
back
something.
for
I'll
New
be back
Year's
for New
Day?
Year's. Yeah.
Oh, well, I think I'm going to be there too because Space Command, which is where most of us on that table read know each other from,
Yeah.
has been having a New Year's Day party that I'm for sure going to. So
Well,
I
heck
could
yeah.
always invite you to that if you want to come to something like that type of a deal.
Sure. I'd love to.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Well,
All right. So
cool.
now, do you know anything about Star Trek?
So I am a Star Wars person.
Star Wars. Okay.
My knowledge of Star Trek is the Chris Pines movies. I am so sorry. I know who Picard is. I've seen some. There, yeah,
O R
there,
2 D
C-3PO.
2 Yes. Where are you? It seems we've been made to suffer. It's our
Oh
lot
no.
in life.
There you go. You'd actually do a really good Clone Wars Obi-Wan impersonation.
Oh, good.
I bet
Yeah,
you'd
I
do
could.
really great at that.
I
But
was
anyways, I
Obi-Wan
do know
Kenobi
some Star
for
Trek.
Halloween
That's more my
once.
partner and my stepdad.
Okay.
But I do
Well, then I
appreciate it.
won't make you do this.
Oh, I'll do it. Live long and prosper.
Live
Spock's
long and
great.
prosper,
Yeah.
my dear Piscean spirit being.
Pranakasha production. Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life.
For the benefit of all beings everywhere.
We gotta